Welcome to our session on Jed Match. Up until now, we've been getting our DNA results, but then the question is, what do I do with them to make them useful? How can I identify other cousins that I may have that have tested with other companies? Jed Match offers a solution to this problem. I first want to give special thanks to genealogists Louise Coakley and Jared Smith. Both of them have written excellent articles on how to make use of Gedmatch. And since tonight we're not going to cover everything that Gedmatch has to offer, you may want to refer to the links listed at the bottom of the screen to see how to use each one of the features in more detail. I also want to thank them because they both gave me permission to make screenshots from their articles that are part of this presentation. So what is Gedmatch? Gedmatch is a volunteer-run site for people who've already taken an autosomal DNA test. The nice thing is that you can upload your results to Gedmatch regardless of the company that you use. Testers download their raw data from their online company and then upload it to Gedmatch. It is then processed and added to a large database with users for many companies. At this point, they have 250,000 people that have transferred their results, their autosomal results, over to the Gedmatch site. This compares with 5 million people, for instance, who are on the Ancestry database. The problem with Ancestry, though, as you probably know, is that they do not have a chromosome browser. So you're unable to compare exactly how you compare with someone you may match with on Ancestry. This solves that problem too. Why would you use Gedmatch? Well, you can compare your results with testers from several companies. You can use their tools to compare and analyze your DNA with other users. There are tools that will produce admixture and ethnicity results. And for a small fee, you have access to additional tools that will allow for triangulation. The first step, of course, is to register. And I know that many of you have already done that, but if not, go to gedmatch.com and you can see a place where it says to register and click here. Then you have to upload your data to Gedmatch. You can see that there's a generic upload that they say is fast. There's a specific upload area for 23andMe. And also you have the opportunity, if you'd like, to upload your family trees by using a GEDCOM file. Note that it says that you should not open or unzip raw DNA data files before uploading. We found in the past that some people that used a Mac, depending on how their settings were set up, files were automatically unzipped. Make sure if you're using a Mac that you do not unzip your files because they cannot be uploaded to Gedmatch correctly if you do that. They have provided very detailed directions on how to upload your results with links for each one of the companies: Ancestry, FTDNA, WeGene, MyHeritage, and also they provide generic upload instructions. If you click on the link, it will give you something that looks like a Wikipedia page for each one of the companies and give you step-by-step directions on how to upload your DNA. When you register, they want you to put the exact name of the donor here. And if you notice, I've highlighted, it says, please use your real name. It won't be displayed, so you don't have to worry about the privacy issues connected with displaying your real name in connection with the DNA. On the second line, it allows you to substitute alias. Often people might put initials or a term that is meaningful to them here, and that's what will be connected to your DNA. You also have a chance to update that information if you like. If you notice, it says, please acknowledge that you authorize this data to be made available for comparisons in our public database. If you're unwilling to do that, there's no reason to register for Gedmatch at all, because you won't be able to make any comparisons if it's not in the public database. Now, is that a concern? It could be. You need to think how much risk you're willing to accept. Please realize that when you look at the public database, I can take any kit number and run the same set of tests for everybody. So for instance, my friend John here, if I have his kit number, I can plug in that kit number and see who he might be related to. But that's the wonderful thing about Gedmatch. People provide email addresses, and so you're more likely to get responses from people that use Gedmatch if you have questions about how you might be related. Initial processing should take place very quickly, often within the hour. While you're waiting, if you notice on the left-hand side of the screen, they have additional articles that you could read or resources that will allow you to understand the benefits of Gedmatch. Full processing can take up to 2 days, often less. It depends on how many people are doing it at the same time. You will see 2 asterisks next to your kit number if it's still in the process of being fully available for all of the utilities. When it's ready, it will let you know, and you can go ahead and use all of the tools. After about an hour, though, there's one of the tools you can use, and that is the one-to-one compare, where if you have someone else's kit number, you can plug it in there and compare it to yours. If not, you're just going to have to wait a little bit until full processing takes place. If you notice, these are the tools that are free under Analyze Your Data. The best thing you can do is just play with them one by one and see what they'll allow you to do. You're probably not going to have to use the information or action buttons unless a kit that you did have up there or someone else had up there disappears. It'll tell you how you can recover it there. So let's look at some of these tools and what they do. Most people start with a one-to-many comparison. What happens with this utility is that you put in a kit number. In this case, I've listed mine. And then you have choices about whether or not you want to compare autosomal results or X results. We're going to talk about the autosomal results right now. If you notice, they have a 7 centimorgan default setting. You don't want to go lower than that because, first of all, it'll increase the number of results you have. They're not likely to be genealogically significant results, and so you just probably want to leave it at the default setting when you're starting out, and then the results will come up in a chart that looks like this. Here's a one-to-many comparison that I did. As you can see, you want to focus on the column that says autosomal. On the top there, it has total centimorgans. The more centimorgans that you have in common with a person, the better. They're organized that way by default, but you can also change them in the other direction if you'd like. It has the largest amount of centimorgans that you share with that person, and it also has an estimate of how many generations separate the person who's in the default with the one whose results you're looking at. So for instance, in this case, one-to-many comparisons tool showed that Mark over here was predicted to be about 1.9 generations away from the person he was being compared to. The key to these matches is the number of total centimorgans. That's what you're most interested in, shared by each match, as well as the largest centimorgan. If you're unfamiliar with this term, I suggest you go back and review earlier videos that we have linked, or read from Blaine Bettinger's book, or look at the ISOG website, which will give you a much more detailed explanation of what a centimorgan is. Judy Russell, the legal genealogist, says that the results can be sorted by the total amount of DNA you have in common with others, measured in units called centimorgans. The abbreviation is small c, large m, not to be confused with centimeters, by the longest segment you share, and by the number of generations you're likely distant from your matches and more. Of course, when you look at the generations, you're going to be most interested in the ones that are listed as closest to you. This chart is so important. I suggest that you screenshot it and download it somewhere on your computer. It says here that this was produced by the DNA Detectives, which is a Facebook group that provides really valuable information, especially to people who may not know who their parents are. If you notice, the chart provides an average number of centimorgans on the left side and then predicts what relationship you may have if you share that amount of centimorgans. Notice again that it's a range. So full sibling might be anywhere from 2,300 to 3,900 centimorgans in common, and so on. You can see that there are several groups there. Now I point this out because let's look for a minute at group C, where it says first cousin. I often have somebody show up as a first cousin to me, and really there are other relationships that need to be accounted for. The same number of centimorgans, if you look, the range is 575 to 1,330. If you look at that range, you can see that the same amount of centimorgans could also indicate a half aunt, uncle, niece, or nephew, a great grandparent, a great grandchild, a great aunt, uncle, niece, or nephew. This is important because ancestry may identify someone as a potential first cousin. You know that person is not a first cousin, but there are other relationships that are possible. And the fewer centimorgans that are involved in the match, the more possibilities there are as to what your relationship could be with them. I took this information from the earlier slide that showed how many total centimorgans were shared with the individual. And you can see here that in the first case, there were 1,094.3 centimorgans shared, but look at the predicted relationships. It's not just first cousin that could fit into that group. In this case, the largest centimorgan shared was 97.7. But if you move down the table, for instance, where it says 214.5, with the largest centimorgan being 35.8, it was predicted by Ancestry that this person was a second cousin to me, but there were other possibilities. Luckily for me, the number of centimorgans did match our actual second cousin relationship after it was documented with the paper trail I was able to develop. These are the kind of results you can get from Gedmatch that I absolutely love. Again, I'm looking at those 6 people that I compared, and there's 2 bits of information here. One of them gives you the starting point and the end point for the exact match on chromosome 9 for each one of the people. It's outlined there in the middle table. What I really love is you can choose the option to display the graph. And this for me is so much easier to understand because I can look at that graph and I can see what segments of DNA actually overlap. So if I'm looking at this initial table, persons 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the left-hand side all share varying degrees of centimorgans in common on that chromosome. In the middle there, you can see quite a bit of overlap. And then person number 3, for some reason, with the little blue bar, got their own unique bit of DNA that is not shared with anyone else in the list. The color coding has to do with the length that they share in common, Let me show you a couple of other examples. This is where the same group of people match on chromosome 12. I think it's really interesting that if you look at the right-hand side, everybody but person number 3 inherited part of that same chromosome. Number 3 did not. We talked about the difference between a genealogical and a genetic family tree. I have some cousins that maybe everyone in the group matches, but number 3. And what happened there? Well, as we've discussed before, when you get down to, say, the 4th or 5th generation, it's much more probable that you're not going to be able to share everything in common with your other cousins. Somebody's going to lose that segment of DNA. But at the same time, person number 3, if you look in the middle of chromosome 12, they share large stretches of DNA in common with the first 2 matches in particular and the 4th match. This is where it really gets interesting and on a one-to-one comparison form. You'll notice in Gedmatch that they caution you not to immediately write to someone unless you've also done a one-to-one comparison to see if you are actually related. This is because you don't know if the DNA you've inherited is from the paternal side, the maternal side, so they want you to do a one-to-one comparison. You have options then. You can choose to see the graphics and the positions, which is what I love, position only, which is the chart, or graphics only. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, it summarizes all the results for your match with that person. In this case, it says that the largest segment shared between the 2 people being compared is 135.2 centimorgans. The total of centimorgans, and they're only looking at the centimorgans that have at least 7 centimorgans, but these 2 people share 1,776 centimorgans. 41 of them are matching, and the estimated number of generations to the MRCA, which means most recent common ancestor, is 1.5. I have to give thanks to Jared Smith, who allowed me to snip this information on the color coding. I noticed that there's a little bit of a typo in the second paragraph where it says SPN. I'm sure he meant to say SNP, which stands for SNPs. But at least this slide explains what the color coding means. Yellow, it says, are half matches. That means it comes from one parent or the other, which is typical. You're going to see a lot of yellow. Green, that would largely apply to endogamous populations. I would love to get the DNA results for one of my Jewish friends so that I could see how many of them are endogamous matches, meaning that mom and dad both have that characteristics in their DNA. Red, it says red lines indicates that there is not a match on these SNPs. So what you're really going to focus on is that blue bar, which indicates large segments of shared DNA that are either half or full matches. My favorite tool in Gedmatch is the one where you can compare people who match both kits or one of 2 kits, because it's like using the in common with tool or a not in common with tool that you see on FTDNA. Let's interpret what we have here. We have a kit number for Jared and we have one for Lynn. And in comparing the 2 of them, this is the information you can have. The 2 of them together match the other people that are listed on the left with their kit numbers grayed out. Looking at the generations, we can see that Jared is presumably 3.2 generations away from the most recent common ancestor for the 2 of them, where Lynn is about 3.5 generations away from the most recent common ancestor. They're very close in being near the same generation because there's only a 0.3 generation difference between these two people. But what's really interesting is that they share a match with all of the other people that are listed on the left-hand side. They're in common with. So, as it says, we can now analyze these common matches to verify or refute your relationship via triangulation. The generation columns provide estimates of the distance to the most recent common ancestor for the two people you're comparing and the common match. Gedmatch can't differentiate between your chromosomes, so make sure you do a one-to-one between everyone involved before assuming that matching segments mean that you have a common ancestor. And the reason for that is, again, we don't know if the chromosomes that you inherited came from mom or dad or both unless we do the one-to-one compare. Here's one that's sort of interesting that I did recently. Notice anything? If you focus on this particular slide, there's a blue bar all the way across when we compared this person's kit to another kit. If you don't know what that means that the person whose kit we're comparing was the parent of the other kit that was compared. This is an exciting application for how to use Gedmatch in a way that could help you identify cousins from the same region. I've been communicating for years with cousins from County Limerick, Ireland. We've never been able to put it all together, but more and more members of the group have been taking a DNA test so that we can compare our results to each other. And even though we don't have a common surname, we do realize that we're all part of the same family. And this particular test allows us to see how many centimorgans we have in relationship to each other. So if we look over to the right-hand side, and again, they're color-coded, this person shares 27.2 centimorgans in comparison to the other person on the tree. Now, unfortunately, these are grayed out. But this is sort of a x-axis, y-axis comparison. If you compare the first person on the left-hand side, you can get the idea moving across the screen exactly how many centimorgans there are in common between each one of the people on the list in comparison to others. On the right where you see 216.2 and then later 216.2, that may be either a sibling or someone who's uploaded results from two companies, and the largest segment is 216, and you can see that it might even be the same person. But we can begin to put together our relationships here. Here it is in another format, and you can see that over 100 centimorgans, where we see 2,843, like I said, that's probably the same person. But many of us share a significant amount of DNA with other people in the group. And here's how we can start to analyze it. Now, I realize that for privacy issues, I grayed out everyone's name. You're actually going to have to try this with a group of people to see what this looks like so you can look at the chart and realize how one kit compares to another kit. There is also a chromosome segment matching tool, which I think is really exciting because, again, you can take a group of people and create a graph that looks like this. We have the exact amount of centimorgans shared, the starting and ending points on chromosome 4, but then down below, you can visually see where the chromosomes overlap each other. This is a pretty significant match. You're going to probably end up deciding that these people are related, have a common ancestor. Now you need your paper research to try to figure it out. This is a generations tool. So you can plug some kit numbers in there, and you can see the estimated generations where the most recent common ancestor is estimated to be for each individual kit. Admixture utilities. We all know the problem with estimating ethnicity, and a lot of it has to do with what's the reference population. The nice thing about Gedmatch is that they have several tools, 55 different admixture calculators, not just one. And you can make graphs and do their predictions and see how much they vary. And often, again, it's going to be based on the reference populations that each individual tool uses. So in this particular one, you can see that this person, based on the green ENF, 43.66%. If we look ANE, and it's going to explain to you in the tool exactly what those abbreviations stand for and what populations that person's been compared to. It says they've got a little bit of Amerindian in there. This is an important caution. If you are going to use their admixture tools, you might want to choose a different tool based on your ethnic background. For instance, if you're European, you might want to try the Eurogenes K13 tool. For a more general overview, try the Dodecad World 9, MDLP K13 Ultimate, or MDLP World 22 tool. If you have Jewish ancestries, you might try the Eurogenes J test. And for Asian origins, you might want to try the Harappa World Project. The important thing to know is that the number in the calculator name indicates how many reference populations are included in that calculator. So the higher the number, the more reference populations there are included in the resulting table and pie chart. If we look at Eurogenes again, K13, that means they have 13 reference populations they're comparing you to. If you look at the Dodecad World 9, it's 9 populations. And you see this other tool that has 22 populations. Gedmatch also has what they refer to as Tier 1 utilities. Now remember, I told you that most of the tools on Gedmatch are completely free, and that is in fact the case. But they have some Tier 1 utilities that they do charge for. Right now, the charge is $10 to use them for a month. What I do, if I know I'm going to have time, I pay the $10, and then I have access to these additional tools that are listed in the Tier 1 box. And they are pretty amazing if you do it. If I know I'm going to be really busy that month, I might avoid paying the fee at all and just save up some of that exploration until the following month when I might make the $10 donation again. But these are the tools that they provide. They're one-to-many matches. You may think, wait a minute, I just saw one-to-many matches up in the free tools. And that's true. But this one where it says new version, it allows you to do additional things and put all of the information within the spreadsheet. I can tell you it is a very exciting tool. Matching segment search, that too can be a very exciting tool. It says find other kits with segments that match yours. Some of these tools also take more time than the free tools. So I know in some cases, for instance, if you run the triangulation tool, it may take you 45 minutes to get the results. They will warn you of that. That's the kind of thing that I set up and go to bed and get the results the next morning. The Lazarus tool is supposed to create kits for dead ancestors, for instance. Like my father and mother were not alive to do a DNA test, but it will pull together information from other people that I've tested and try to create what might be DNA and that I've inherited from each of them. I really haven't played with that much, but I think it'd be a fun one to do. I don't need to explain the advantages of triangulation because you can feel much more confident that you share a recent common ancestor with other people that might be identified in that group. This is what the matching segment search will do for you. Chromosome by chromosome, you can see, in this case on chromosome 15, where people overlap. You can see the length of their segments, the number of SNPs, the exact beginning and ending positions, and there's a graph on the right-hand side, and of course the wider the color, the more DNA you have in common. In this test, if you notice, it was the matching segments were identified between the person listed, their kit number, and 8,246 matching kits. This is one of these tools that takes a little bit longer to do, and it is a Tier 1 utility. This is an example of the kinds of results you can get by using the segment triangulation tool. Again, it has starting and ending points, the number of centimorgans, the more the better, as we know, and where the overlaps might be between you and other kit members. The more overlaps you have, the longer the centimorgans, the more likely that you are to share a common ancestor. And with that, it's time to play. So we're going to take this presentation live and answer some of your questions. I hope this was helpful. There were several tools we didn't discuss, like on identifying eye color, seeing if your parents are related, and that's a super interesting tool. You don't have to have their DNA. It'll just look at yours and try to determine whether or not they're related. I suggest you play with these as often as you would like and see what kind of discoveries you can make. I hope you enjoyed Jed Match. Thanks.